Hello, welcome to NT Zone. This is Dale. So a while back, I was taking a course on philosophy of science, and when I was doing it, I'm a philosophy uh, major. I am in grad school. I'm studying philosophy and so on. So I had already some interest in Plato and Slavoj Žižek and Lacan and several other thinkers. Scientific minds, even like Sir Francis Bacon, Descartes, and so on and so on and so on. And I also had a developing, I've been doing MBTI for about 3 years, so I had a well developed interest in MBTI, but also a developing interest in psychology in general, along with philosophy, which I've been interested in for a very long time, over half my life, basically. So, in my research, for this research essay that I had to do for this class, I actually decided I would argue about whether or not Galen's temperaments were legitimate. And in doing so, I had to look at ancient sources: Aristotle, Plotinus, Galen himself, Hippocrates. Of course, not all of them made the cake or made the final product. I looked at contemporary guys, uh, Dr. Jerome Kagan, for example. I looked at Keirsey a little bit. He didn't make the final cut because I was talking about a different temperament system, but still, he was cool to look at. I looked at medical journals and so on. I discovered that there was a lot more than I had expected. I thought that the four temperaments were just constructs. No, there's a very legitimate side to it. In fact, I looked at brain chemicals. I looked at neural pathways. I saw that neurologically speaking, and like a lot of things can affect our personalities, our hormones, our neural pathways that we get in our DNA from our DNA, and so on. I looked at even this evidence I used from like this medical journal talking about borderline personality disorder and how it was connected to. I cannot say it on video because I don't have it in front of my face, but this neural pathway, certain pathway that goes on, and basically speaking, this gave me some evidence as well as the effects of testosterone, dopamine, and so on and so on and so on, that the basic idea that Galen had was right. There are liquids in the body, well, within the brain, which does have an innate impact on our personality. Although that's not the full story, there's way more to it. But at the same time, I decided, okay, well, Galen got a lot right. So, clapping hands. People also fail to talk about the temperaments of the country because, like, another theory was, where you're born can also impact your personality. Um, Someone is born in the mountains versus someone born on the beach. You see people act roughly different, at least by stereotype. And that's another part of Galen. But this said, I would like to talk about philosophy. So, what goes into medical research in terms of psychological and philosophical ideas? So, I do have with me my bag because, well, I just am not home. So, here we go. You have in deductive reasoning, which goes from the universals to the particular. People talk about this all the time in basic logic courses. That's how you get syllogisms. You have induction. You go from the particular to the universal. Now, a lot of people don't realize this, but there's a third. Now, this third one is kind of more tricky. In fact, the philosopher named Charles Sanders Peirce, he basically was the first to really notice this when he's looking at induction and how to effectively do it. It's called abductive reasoning. Now, what is abductive reasoning? It's kind of a probabilistic reasoning. And, well, I will not give so much detail here, but basically, you take from facts that you already know, and you're reasoning about, it towards other facts you already know, and patterns you see, and you're basically expanding out. So then you have a most likely, this is most likely the case. This is what I'm going to assume for now because this is what I know. And this is basically giving an educated guess. So you might be complaining that educated guesses, well, that's not objective, is it? Well, it is. You basically go by what you know. That's basically just part of humans. I mean, that's all it goes to. We are all humans. We have limited knowledge. In fact, the categories which we use for universals, animal, man, and so on, we already know that a lot of these genuses exist. But when it comes to man, birds, types of mammals, and so on, we have some unifying traits we can say, and yet we do not have a full picture. We don't know how many mammals there are. We don't know how many different types of anything there is. So we have an educated guess, which we are very confident in, and that's just scientific reasoning. All of it is educated guess based off of the patterns we see. Now, how does it relate to the psychology of personality? Well, I had already talked about the temperament, so let's talk about other things. So, taking the big five, neuroticism, extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, openness. There's 5, of course, as you know, big 5, obviously. But let's say you didn't realize that. So how do you get the big 5? You look at, well, the scientists, what they did was they looked at several groups of people, and what they did was they paid attention to how people described each other, and from how people described each other, they were able to form some hypotheses. And this is what abductive reasoning does, is it tries to form rock solid hypotheses that you can go by. And then you use the inductive reasoning later to check the facts. But so you have these ideas. So you establish, some people are more open than others, some people are more neurotic than others. You have that some people are more extroverted than others. You have that some people are more agreeable than others, and so on. But you see these full traits that seem to form in men. Okay, so there might be more traits and might not be much more. In fact, Jung himself, when he was talking about this in the psychological types, when he was talking about his own research, not the big 5 obviously, he was talking to us about how, yeah, there are more categories. There's willpower and a bunch of other stuff, but he's just going to focus on these certain temperaments. Same with Dr. Jerome Kagan. He talked about how he could find thousands of temperaments, but he recommends for personality psychologists just look at one or so group of temperaments. That's all you can really do. That's all you can really focus on. Otherwise, you're not really being scientific, are you? So you have this. So once you've see this pattern that's emerging, that you see, that you have an educated guess on, what do? You bring it to another person and you say, hey, look at my findings. And so they're going to look at it. And as they look at it, they're going to be critical of it. So what do? Is they put corrections on it if they think there's corrections, which you will debate or you will dispute. Then you look at it, you put your own findings, and they put their own findings, and it kind of meshes together. You find what is seemingly true in all cases, and that's how you form your knowledge of these temperaments and so on. And that's basically how psychological research works, and that's basically how trait psychology research works. And it all goes back to a pragmatist method of reasoning and learning. Now, the other side of philosophy I will talk about later on this channel. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe.